Thank you for
Hi,
inviting
everyone. Eugene, thank you for joining us. Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. You should just start with an intro. We're going to start with an introduction. Eugene Ohu is a full-time faculty in the Department of Organizational Behavior and Human Resource Management at the Lagos Business School. His teaching areas include management communication, human behavior in organizations, digital marketing, and predictive HR and analytics. His current research interests are on the psychology of human-computer interactions in the workplace in order to promote individual well-being and organizational productivity. He is the principal investigator at the Virtual Human-Computer Interaction VHCI lab at the Lagos Business School. At the lab, he is exploring the character and well-being associations of virtual reality. He is also working with his team to develop VR solutions for training and simulations. He is intrigued by how people navigate their multiple roles across work and non-work domains. As technology introduces flexibility in nature, design, and how work is done, Dr. Ohu studies the implications for work-life balance that his permeability introduces. Finally, as computers now make it easier to collect and analyze behavioral data about people and business processes, he uses big data to provide insights useful for human resource and marketing communications decisions. Eugene belongs to the following professional associations: American Psychological Association, the APA, the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology, CEOP, Academy of Management, and the Association of Business Communication. For all, he regularly serves as a peer reviewer. He also reviews for the Journal of Business Ethics, and he consults with fast-moving consumer goods companies on gaining management data and marketing insights from digital data. He also assists HR departments on the high-performance work systems that motivate employees for increased productivity through work-life balance. He's also involved in some workplace safety studies. Dr. Ohu is on the executive board of the Nigerian Internet Registration Association and the managers of the .NIG country code domain. He's also an entrepreneurship mentor on the Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Program. Eugene speaks and writes Italian and Spanish fluently and has a mastery of French. That's fantastic. He has a bachelor's degree in pharmacy from the University of Benin, is a registered pharmacist and a member of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. And today his session is XR for Education and Training. Dr. Ohu, please take the stage, sir.
Well, thank you. I hope I can do justice after all of this introduction. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here. And really, I just wanted to tell our story. So maybe I should say, welcome to the Lagos Business School. I'm in the VHCI lab, the Virtual Human Computer Interaction Lab we've got here. And I thought that maybe one way to connect with the XR Innovation Week is to just tell our VR story. So here we're building a world which we call the connected spaces. So I'm just simply going to tell the story of how we got to where we are. Okay. Now, the SRO community is growing and is very interesting. It's very encouraging to find conferences like this because it makes you realize that as new as the technology is, that you are not alone. Okay. And then another thing is also that I'm not going to begin to reiterate the benefits of SRO because I believe that all of you here are experts. I mean, we know it's the next big thing. If you know the amount of money that the likes of Facebook are deploying to XR, okay, the thousands of engineers that the likes of Google are deploying to this, how much Facebook, for example, paid for the likes of Beat Saber, or even when they bought Oculus. you realize that they may not say it is really the next big thing. So it's exciting to be, if you like, at the cusp of a new revolution. Some will call it what you like, fifth industrial or sixth, but really hoping that when it breaks, we are all ready. So, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about is that when we talk about SRO, we should not forget the novelty, that it is new. And in a sense, people say that technology democratizes the entire world, and is very true here. SRO is new in Africa, as new as it is in the rest of the world. You have the same devices, you have the same technology, we're all playing in the same space. So I think we should always keep the novelty in mind. And then for us here in Nigeria, this novelty has had many implications, which I'm going to share shortly. For instance, at the lab here, we're still figuring out how to harness the benefits of SRO for different domains. I mean, I will share some of the things we are doing. People are figuring out how to harness it, for instance, for training, simulation. At the business school, for example, we usually take people out to get some experiences in industries and all that. With SRO, we don't have to do that. We give them the simulation in-house. People are deploying the likes of VR for clinical interventions, post-traumatic stress disorder, and things like that. All right. Specifically, one of the things we are doing is trying to deploy virtual reality in education, specifically character education. And I like to say that it's not a walk in the park, because maybe I can just use Unreal Engine and use Unity to start deploying educational experiences, but a lot of research go into it. For instance, you have a dilemma between giving people exciting experiences with technology or using the technology as a tool for learning. For example, when people come into the lab, if you like, we have a menu, just like you go to a restaurant and then you get a menu and say, okay, what do we serve you? We have a menu of what we present to people. When people are coming for the first time, what's the first experience we give them? One of the first ones is a VR experience called Richie's Plank Experience. If you haven't experienced it, you try it. Or if you have a VR lab, I'll encourage, it's a good one to give people for the first time, because it shakes their sense of what is reality, right? But anyway, so you have a dilemma between giving them exciting experiences, using technology as a tool. Here we're trying to do both, using VR as a tool, but at the same time trying to answer the question, how can we use technology for good? Because as people like Jeremy Baileyson will tell you in his book on VR, that there are so many possibilities in VR that you can really do. You can literally do anything you want, simulate any experience you want. But then here comes the test. You can decide, therefore, to use it for good or for evil. Boring is not allowed. We use VR for education. So when I say VR, because is the aspect of the XR technology that we're focused on specifically for now. But everything I say, in a sense, would apply to SRO as well. Boring is not allowed. Because when you think of using VR for education, I think it would be a mistake to think, give them a classroom experience. No, it has to be exciting. It has to be exciting. So what's our story? In the introduction, I mean, they already told you how I got here. My main research interest is human-computer interaction. I'm interested in psychology in the workplace, how people deploy technology at work, how people deploy technology for communication, interpersonal relationships, or to run organizations. So in that sense, looking at that intersection between technology and people, how the technology will affect people, and how people are affected by technology. So if there's something wrong with that intersection, perhaps how to change the people or to change the technology for that relationship to be better. And then you begin to understand why I'm interested in work-life balance, because technology is, kind of makes that boundary between the work and non-work domain permeable, right? So in a sense, it's positive technology, really, we can say. So continuing with our story, one challenge we had was purchasing VR equipment as a Nigerian. Okay, we've run this lab now since 2019, but in the last 1 year, we've had to scale up because of a grant that we received from the Templeton World Charity Foundation. I mean, one thing is to get the grant, another is to get the equipment you need. So the Oculus, sorry, the HTC Vive you see on the left, we've had it since 2019. Then in the middle, you have the HTC Vive Pro I. And this is a very interesting one because it fits into one of the research that we've been doing, which is using eye tracking technology to do studies, for example, in advertising, eye fixation advertising, or maybe, if you like, memory recall. So there's a research we have going on. So that's the HTC Vive Pro I. And then you have the HTC Vive there. So to get this equipment, or like the computers we have, such as the Alienware, we had to go through several loops. As you know, I mean, Facebook doesn't have any sales outlet here in Nigeria. So you have to buy it in the United States, in our case, ship to someone else, and then find someone traveling down and then to bring them. Okay, so in there you have to build in the cost of all of this shipping. I'll talk about that monster in the background in a second, the suit there, because yeah, some of you know what that is, right? The motion capture suit. And then another one, so there on the left you have the Valve Index. And then since using the VR for education, we're going to deploy this in schools. We've had to get a lot of the Oculus Quest 2, which you see on the right. Well, another challenge apart from getting equipment that we had to face was hiring and training talent. Now, those of you in this business who have been here longer than us, we know that it's not a cheap one. And we were getting quotes because we have an experience we wanted to create. Basically, what is it? We're trying to teach empathy and compassion using virtual reality. What's the idea? What is empathy? Being able to walk in the shoes of another person. Now, VR has a particular feature, which is it allows you to take the perspective of another person. In virtual reality, you can get into another environment. So looking at a society like Nigeria with more than 250 ethnic groups, more than 500 languages, some would say, how well do I, for example, in the Southwest, understand the reality of my fellow Nigerians in the North? How well do they understand mine? So is it possible to use VR to immerse me in that environment where I will be truly present and experience that thing in the first person? Will it change the way I perceive this other person? So this is what we're trying to do, empathy and compassion. Okay, so the idea is there. Then how do we get the VR experience? We have to build our own world. We have to build a Nigerian environment to teach this. Because when people get into this VR experience, it has to be real. It has to be, that's the whole idea, right? Reality. And then what was the market quoting for us? The likes of $80,000 for the experience. Okay, thank you very much. I think we're going to try to build our own. Easier said than done, right? So what did we do? We went the route. We also realized that we also had to contribute to the community around us. So what we did was to organize a boot camp. And I think I should also mention some collaborations that have been very useful here. Emisi 3D, we're working with them, Judith Okonkwo, and then we have Professor Karen Schreier, a professor in the United States who has also been doing things on gaming. So we put together a boot camp. So this was a 10-week boot camp to people with different levels of experience, and people, since it was online, thanks to COVID, different levels of experience to train them in how to use Unity 3D to develop VR experiences. So that was good. So we're developing the things in-house. But then there were also some things that we couldn't do in-house. And then on that basis, I wanted to talk about making the decision between hiring talents locally or internationally. Because right now, although the VRO development is going on in-house, the 3D development is being done outside the country. Okay, so we're using a freelancer. That comes with its own challenges. I mean, the decisions, I mean, there were several things that went into that decision. Cost and expertise. Okay, did we look inwards first before anybody accuses me of lack of patriotism? Yes, 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 yes. We looked inwards first, and we looked around, we interviewed many people. So expertise was one. Okay, cost. So we found better expertise, I'm sorry to say that, so which is a challenge for us anyway. Better expertise and more affordable also outside. So this is where the development is going on. But of course, you have to face some challenges, for instance, time zone issues or communication. Hopefully, we're navigating that. Now, making a Nigerian indigenous game, which is what we're doing, a lot of research had to go into it. Character education requires research because, on the one hand, it's easy to say that we would like to develop a virtual reality application to teach empathy and compassion. But how do you even measure that this experience is teaching this particular virtue? First, you have to tease out the virtues. Okay, so it's part of the research. We come to a greater understanding, for instance, that although people might use empathy and compassion synonymously, they are not the same. Okay, that compassion is broader; it includes empathy, but it's not. They're not used interchangeably. So we have to do a lot of research in this, but also research about how to measure. Because when you're doing research, on the one hand, you want to test the baseline. How were these people before your intervention and after your intervention? Immediately after your intervention, 2 months later, 6 months later. So these are all of the things we're doing here besides developing the application itself. Okay. And then, so that's the research. And then another thing we had to contend with was coming to grips in the difference between embodiment and observation. Okay. They're not exactly the same. In a VR experience, I can become, say, let me not reveal the name of one of our characters. Let me just use the name of one of the people here. Say Adeola. Okay, Adeola is in the game. I can become Adeola and experience that thing as Adeola. So that would be embodiment. Or I can watch Adeola in the experience as a third person. They are two different things. So we are also seeing how empathy and compassion will change, either in embodying the experience or just observing. These are research decisions we had to make. And this also affects the kind of experiences you build. And then you have to tell a story. You have to write a story. Okay, so making the story of connected spaces, write a script. My colleagues here, Rennie, Ke, Cynthia, Deola, Mali, everybody involved in the writing the script. Of course, you write the story, but writing the story, you have to understand the reality. What ethnic groups are we representing? Okay, and then after writing the story, you have to gamify it. And here, Karen Schreier, our colleague in the US who has been doing gaming a lot, has been very useful in gamifying it because, like we said, boring is not an option. So making a story of connected spaces, you have to do some 2D storyboarding. So you already have the story itself, right? And to see the flow. And then another decision we had to make was animation. Okay, we had quite some challenge here because we wanted to do everything locally to get people to animate manually. Is it possible? Yes, but a real lifesaver is what you see Rennie wearing here, the motion capture suits, okay, which you see on the slides and which you also see in the background here. Thanks to my brother who is also doing VRO research at Ghana University in the United States. So he was able to convince, we made a case for some collaboration between the two institutions. So we're contributing some assets, animation assets to them. And in exchange, they have loaned us this suit for a while. So with this, animation is a breeze. Okay, you connect it and then bingo. In seconds, you have your animation. And then you have choice of software. Okay, we have the iClone suit. Again, thanks to Templeton, we're able to buy this. This is not very cheap, But Realution, the makers of iClone, fortunately gave us quite some discounts. So you have the likes of iClone 7 for the animation itself, or 3D Exchange to move characters from other places, either Blender or whatever 3D software you're using, moving it to iClone, and you have character creator and things like that. And then what else? And then we've also had to make decisions about locomotion. What kind of, because there are many decisions that you take for granted. You pick up a VR experience, you may not realize what has gone into it. I didn't realize what went into many of them until we started doing it ourselves. How do you decide whether to move in short bursts, okay, or to use it teleporting? Okay, is it just there are considerations such as comfort, whether I get dizzy in VR? So we have to play different VR experiences. For example, if you've played Half-Life Alyx, you know how you move in Half-Life Alyx is different from the way you would move in Boneworks or in Robo Recall or even in Zero Caliber. So we have to make choices. What is the best one? And then talking about choices, that was we have to build our own choice system in the VR experience. And then another thing you also have to do in developing SRO for education, you have to evaluate the impact of what you're doing to check whether learning has actually occurred. How do you check? One thing is to use surveys, to use self-report measures before or after, or to build in measures within the experience that will capture choices, and then to see whether learning has occurred. In this era of COVID, I don't think it would be complete to talk about our VRO lab without talking about how we're impacted by the unique experience of COVID-19. To make our lab safe, we had to build our own irradiation chamber. There are many irradiation chambers, maybe small enough to irradiate a mobile phone, but to irradiate or to sterilize a headset, we had to build our own. And then we went to the internet, and then we found some do-it-yourself, and then we got all of these things, and then we built it ourselves in the lab. Okay, so at least you can come to our lab and use the VR safely. Okay, so you have the 3 boxes there, and then you put them in there for between 15 to 30 minutes, and then it's ready for use by another person. Of course, face mask was compulsory here, is compulsory here, and as soon as it was possible to be vaccinated, yoo-hoo! Okay, so you can say we got ourselves vaccinated. And then I think also we have to give thanks to Templeton World Charity Foundation, who made all of this possible, all of these resources, because they believe in our dream. What is that dream? To use VR for good. What's good? Education. What aspects of education? Education in character, in this case, empathy and compassion. So really thanks to them. And then, well, I would say, yeah, I think this is our handle, VHCI Lab. This is our handle on Twitter and on Instagram. So do follow us. I'll leave it here for now. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, sir. That was really insightful and powerful, I must say. Any questions, Jennifer?
Oh, I have tons of questions. Eugene, thank you so much for sharing all of this insight with us. I love how you're trying to capture the essence of what it is to be human in the interactions themselves. And I loved some of the things that you mentioned around character education and human experience in an XR interaction. You also mentioned capturing data along the way around choices that people make and how powerful that can be with regards to actually showing that we've changed or shaped a behavior in the experience. Can you give us just a little practical insight with regards to what kinds of human behavior you're seeing that XR is allowing us to kind of record or shape in ways that we couldn't before?
Yes, I would mention one which I've been very fascinated about, and that's in advertising. A lot of advertising has been moving from television to games. Advertisers are pursuing the eyeballs. Where are the eyeballs? Most people are playing games now. But if the advertising revenue in games has not grown as much as in television, one reason could be that advertisers have not been convinced that it is effective. How do you measure that advertising in games work? You don't want to advertise in games at the risk of offending the player and disrupting their pleasure. So how can you find that balance to place the adverts in such a way that it doesn't disrupt the gaming experience, but at the same time they notice and like your brand? With the HTC Vive Pro Eye, we're able to capture the eye, the position of the eye in the game. Instead of checking to ask them, which ads did you recall while you were playing the game? At what point did you recall it? No, you don't need to ask them. We're able to measure at this point, the eye was fixated at this point. You would also want to be sure that while being fixated on the object in the game, it doesn't affect the experience, the expertise. Does the expertise remain the same? So this was very useful to us. This has been very useful. So the eye tracking. Another area you might apply eye tracking, which I'm also fascinated about because I teach communication, is in public speaking. I encourage the participants to make eye contact. Most people don't like eye contact because you might be nervous, right? But I encourage eye contact because you want to make the audience feel that they matter to you and that you see them. With the eye tracking, put them through experience to practice public speaking, and then later you can give them this data. You had this amount of eye contact and so on. All right.
Thank you. Well, I can attest to how powerful XR is. While your presentation was starting, I was working on getting my daughter to school, and she was listening to you the whole time. So it was really interesting to hear her insights as well. You were getting her very excited about XR as well. So
happy to hear that. Thank you.
Great. So we have a question, Abdul Malik. He said, what's the process for allowing people into the lab to test out your VR application? And he also finds your presentation very, very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abdul Malik. That question makes me very happy because as Arome and the others will tell you is I know how difficult it is for local developers to have access to resources, and then we have them here and we'd like to make it available. Okay, so recently we made a post on LinkedIn inviting Africans doing research in this who want access. Okay, and then we're also working with colleagues to see, just to answer your question, Cynthia, maybe if I can share in the chat box, if it's possible. Yep, that's her email address. That's our lab manager. So you send her an email. Okay, you send her an email and then she will facilitate access for free. I mean, we got it for free, so it's available so long as we can work out a convenient time schedule. So send her an email and sort it out.
I would thank you, Dr. Ohu.
Yeah, so my question is, with all this tech you guys have, shared at the lab, and the entire developers and the whole union, right? Is there any projection for when we should expect, at least if it's a better version of your experience for us to see? Yeah, because we're all excited, and it would be great to have
yes,
this in mind.
We are excited ourselves. So we see we see the beta version, we see the pre-beta version here every Friday. The developers give us, but really we are running on the clock. So yeah, we're running on a clock. So we actually should deploy this in schools latest by July.
Awesome.
Earlier if possible. Okay. Already we have started one aspect because there are two aspects to the project. One is the game jam, which is already going on. So we're in schools yesterday for a pilot. So, and then the next stage is the gameplay. So very soon, before August.
Yeah, we're expecting it. Emilios, your question, so can wrap up.
Yeah, I'll just say 2 points. Firstly, I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Ohu said about providing XR lab access to African researchers. So just to reiterate, independent and non-affiliated researchers are also eligible. They may be able to give a limited number of people access to the lab and XR facilities for their research. It's located at the Lagos Business School. The only requirement is that you have an active research plan and that they are able to find areas of research convergence. You will, of course, remain affiliated to your institution. Dr. Ohu, is that correct? I've just read that off your research.
Excellent. I'm surprised you found that. Yes, that's excellent. That's accurate.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to make sure the audience were aware of that. I'm so happy you touched on HCI. HCI fascinates me. Us, it's something that we're researching daily at the moment. I just wanted to ask you for your advice, really, because I read a recent article, which so I think it was published 6 months ago. I think it was the 7 HCI Grand Challenges, and it identified and presented human environment interactions, ethics, privacy and security, well-being, health and eudaimonia, accessibility and universal access, learning and creativity, and social organization and democracy. And I just wanted to find out from yourself, out of those challenges mentioned, which ones do you and your team seem to encounter more often? And yeah, just any other information you could share on that would just be really interesting.
Now, I don't know if that was my connection, but I lost you a little bit there. May I ask you to repeat that if you don't mind?
Of course. So I read a recent article which highlighted the 7 grand challenges which were identified with HCI. Ethics, privacy and security, well-being, health and eudaimonia, accessibility and universal access, learning and creativity, and social organization and democracy. And I just wanted to find out from your experience in the lab with the team, what challenges do you and the team seem to face more often than not? And is there any other information you'd like to share based on your experiences?
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Well, more than from our experience, I have some concerns. I have concerns about ethics and privacy. Okay, you see, earlier on I talked about how much data we're able to capture with the eye tracking device. Okay, now a lot about XR is below the radar of the regulators. The regulators are not as knowledgeable as the practitioners, so they can't regulate that space. So I'm concerned about that. So I would say in terms of concern, I'm concerned about ethics and privacy, data privacy. And then, well, access is an issue. I mean, I would say access because to develop a VR application is relatively cheap. Unity 3D is free, right? But how do people test it if I understand the accessibility? Okay, so one of the Oculus Quest, the smallest one, costs $300. Okay, so that's another thing that. But of course, I will also say well-being. Yeah? Well-being is another interesting one. Especially for me, I'm in the Department of Organizational Behavior. So that's really a core thing for me. For instance, in one of the studies that we did, we're trying to see whether VR immersion is counterintuitive, where it opposes mindfulness, or whether VR can be used to teach mindfulness. So we have why? Because what is mindfulness? To be there without judgment, perceive things. So we have a research ongoing testing the mindfulness before and after. And then we also have a research where we strap, what do you call it? The pulse. How do you measure the pulse? And to check the pulse to see stress level before or after gameplay. So well-being is another one that is really interesting for me. I don't know if that helps a bit.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I will we'll reach out to you as well. We're fascinated to hear more about that.
It will be a pleasure to continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Eugene. It's a great honor to have you. Usually share what you guys are doing at the lab. It's amazing. And what one advice I would give to you is, if it's possible to, I know it's a research-based project, right? But if it's possible to also open up accessibility to gears, especially to developers and startups within Nigeria, so within the Lagos State, right? It would be great, because if they have that, they will support you also, and also support themselves in creating amazing content. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Have
so
a
much.
good day. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Bye, everyone.